Hi guys, I'm Tammy K. Welcome to my channel, and today is day 2 of my Watercolor Beginners Series. So today we're going to be talking all about paints, the types that you can purchase, your palette, how to care for your palette, how to activate your paint. We'll also talk about water control, how much water to use versus paint. And then finally, we're going to do a value scale. Value is just the lightness and the darkness of a pigment or a color. And so we can see by adding water how much lighter that color can be. So join me, we're gonna have so much fun today. I'm really excited because I have lots of options to show you. We can talk about different qualities as well as how they come to you, what kind of consistency. I have these out here. Just gonna put them on my desk. Let's just make a mess. So first of all, let's talk about tube paints versus pans. So when I first started watercoloring, I used these things. So I believe one of my first palettes was actually this one that I purchased on Amazon. And I filled all of these spaces with tube paint. So this is St. Petersburg White Nights paint. You can see it's a Russian brand. You can see the Russian words here. And I decided to use these tubes of paint because they were recommended by Claris Gnomes on YouTube, a wonderful floral artist. And these are more of it's between student and professional grade. What I like then, and these are a little bit old, so they're some of them are leaking out. How fun is that? But the great thing is that you're gonna get a lot more paint for your money if you use the tubes. So basically what you do, you grab a palette off of Amazon or wherever, and then you fill each place with this paint, and then you're going to let everything set and dry for about 24 hours. And once it has more of a hardness to it, then it's good to go. Otherwise, if you use it straight out of the tube, you're gonna end up using more paint than you should. With watercolor, we use very little paint to water, and we want to let that have a nice liquidy consistency so it can spread on our paper. So here's an example. There's 24 of these empty spaces, these little cubes, and you can fill them with paint, and then you can use these sides to mix. I have a smaller version over here, and these are both off of Amazon. This one has a lot of sand in it. I took it to the beach, so that one needs to be cleaned up, but it's definitely a really nice size for traveling. I take it when I go and paint outside in plein air. Now this is a larger one that I ended up getting because I wanted to have more space to mix and all the things. So I do like this one a lot, and it gives you these nice spaces to mix your colors. And I did cool colors over here mostly and some warm colors on this side. This is also off of Amazon. And so when you want to reuse any of your paints, we're gonna talk about what you do to activate it in a little bit. And so you have your tubes, but honestly, when you're starting out, it might be easier just to go with your pan sets. So I have a variety over here from some student grade to professional. This one is Mei Liang, and it is by Rubens. So I will link all these products below so you guys have a chance to check them out on Amazon if you're interested. The great thing about pans is they come already filled, they're already dry, and all you have to do is spray it down with water just to activate that paint. And I will share with you a little bit more about how we activate it soon. Over here, I never wash this side unless things are getting kind of muddy and too much brown or black here. To keep my colors bright, I might wash it down, but all you do is you spray it down, reactivate the paint, and you can use this. This is good paint still. So Mei Liang, I love this. I think it was $20 on Amazon. It's a good buy. I started off with craft paints, and I don't think I have an example with me right here, but any type of Crayola or otherwise that you can use, it's great to start with. Some paints are really chalky, and so you just have to experiment and see, but for $4 or $5, you can find some really great options. I'm going to go with this one next. And by the Mei Liang, for the price, the quality as a student grade is excellent. The colors are vibrant. I love them. This is by Hippie Crafter, and they were so kind as to send this palette to me for free. I did a few reels on there. I love the size of this palette. There are 36 colors and lots of space to mix your colors on. I would say the colors are probably not as vibrant as the Mei Liang. Mei Liang is my #1 choice now. St. Petersburg White Nights, also excellent, and you can get this in pans as well. So I recommend those two highly. This one now has a lot of colors, which at first seem like a great deal, but if you'll notice, some of these colors look actually pretty similar. And so when you mix them on your paper, you're gonna see there's not a lot of difference in the vibrancy, intensity, and just the color in general. And so that's the problem when you have too many colors. You start to get a lot of similar things going on. But it's I think it's a great set. I use it a lot to start off with, and it's pretty fun. I do like the variety of colors. That's not a bad thing necessarily. Okay, now the Winsor Newton, this is Cotman. They have a professional brand, and then they have the Cotman series, which is a student series. This is their pocket palette. I do love it because, well, it's very small. You can take it to do painting outside if you want to. It comes with this little short brush, which is great. I wish there were a bit more mixing spaces, although I recently discovered that you have this. So there you go. When I say more space, I like a mixing palette that is large, kind of like this one, because you could mix 3 or 4 different reds and pinks here. If you're doing your florals, for example, you can then kind of dip a little into each one, and then your petals, as you're making them, they're going to have variation of colors, which I think is really pretty. And so this is a little place where you can put water if you want to. The colors also really good quality. I've heard great things about it. I like it. And for student grade, the pricing I think was about $20 as well on Amazon. These pans are going to last you a long time. Again, you don't use a lot of watercolor. You don't use a lot of paint when you're doing watercolor. All right, so I've got a couple left here. I say this one is considered more of that professional quality. And this one is by Christy Rice. Christy Rice is an amazing watercolorist and artist all over. She uses more than just watercolor in her mediums, but she has this palette. I think it's $40-ish, $42 on Amazon. And like I said, it's a higher quality of paints. And what I love about what she tried to do here was she added colors that you don't classically see on a watercolor palette. For example, you have these creamy shades, this pink and this coral, which I absolutely love. And then you've got these more neutral. This is more of a neutral tone. You can mix with other things. And this fluorescent yellow right here. If you don't want to use it straight up, mix it with other things, and you will have some unique shades that you're not seeing in other places. I also love, this is more of a natural green, and this one is more of a bright, kind of a bright yellowish green. I really love that. So I definitely recommend this. Wonderful, beautiful colors. And then finally, I have my Paul Rubens Professional Palette. This one has 24 colors. I really love it. It's vibrant, it's a creamy consistency, and it has enough color variation that I don't have to do a lot of mixing on my own. It's a good size, enough mixing space on your palette. A little bit more pricey, but I think that it's something like maybe $40. Now prices change on Amazon, so I can't remember exactly, and it will ebb and flow, but this is a really good deal for a professional set. So these are my recommendations for paint, things I use and I love. So here's all the paint once again. If you've used any of these, I'm curious, what is your favorite one of these or something else? Let me know in comments so we can get that conversation going. And now we're gonna go on to a little bit more on painting. So now I have everything set up for just demonstrating how to start your palette, how to activate your paint again. So like I said before, I use a little spray bottle. You can use a big one if you want. We're just gonna spray down all of this situation here and on this side as well. And that's gonna start getting your paints nice and activated and wet and juicy so that you can start to move the paint around. And I also have a couple water cups here. And I have 2, and here's the reason. Because what I'd like to do is between picking up paint, I want to dip in the water and just clean it off and then take some fresh water. And that's gonna keep this one more clear so that my brush can really get cleaned up. So for example, we're not gonna use this. And if you want it, well, you can use it. But we're gonna do this for demonstration. So I'm gonna pick up some green here and I'm gonna spray a little bit more. Sometimes you just need a little bit more water on there. I'm gonna pick up some of my green and I'm gonna take it over here. I'm gonna dip, grab some water, and see how my consistency now is really liquidy. And so now I'm gonna go over here and I'm just going to take my brush and just make a nice arc because I'm gonna do some leaves. So I'm gonna make a little stem. I'm gonna press down with the belly, lift up slow, same on the other side to create a nice leaf situation. Let's do the same thing on the other side. So if you've never painted leaves before, this is probably kind of insane. We're gonna dip our brush, and we're going to squeegee off the side, and we're gonna do another leaf, but it's going to be a lot lighter. All right, let's do one where we dip our brush, get a little bit of water, dip in here, and we're scrubbing. And this is how you're gonna get, you can't just dip it in a little bit. You have to do a little scrubbing, and that's gonna make sure you get the brightest, the deepest amount of color there, because you don't want to just scrub a little, you're gonna get a lot of water. And now we're gonna do the same thing on either side. Now we're gonna dip our brush into water, squeegee off the side so we can lose some of that intensity of color, and we're gonna make our leaves once again. You might be wondering why I have a paper towel here. So the reason is because we can use this to dab when there's too much liquid on our brush. If I dip my paintbrush into my paint here, let's pretend that there's a lot of liquid, and I just go with all of that water, it's fine, I can make my leaf, but there's just a lot of water on there that if I'm painting something that I don't want it to have a lot of water there because it's gonna create some weird marks when it dries, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dip in, I'm gonna dab, and then I'm going to make my leaf. And you're gonna see there's hardly any excess water hanging out. It's also lighter. If you don't want it to be super light, you can always add more pigment. And so it's a lot thicker and it's darker, and you're not gonna need to dab as much. And then we're gonna do another leaf right there, okay? So we have a few of those techniques. I'm gonna clean my brush, and then I'm going to dip in here with the clean water so that you're making sure that it is as clean as it needs to be. A big question that I get is paint consistency. How much water to paint do you need to use? And so we're gonna talk about that next as we talk about these 5 items and how to visualize your paint consistency from a weak tea all the way to butter. So we're gonna start with our weak tea mixture, and we're just going to take some of our paint here, adding it to this space. And what we want to look for is a lot of water and a little bit of pigment, just kind of like this, very weak tea. You can still see there's color, it flows and moves really well. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to paint that in our example of weak tea. So this can be good for a basic wash, like a background that you're doing on a painting. And it's so light that it may not, I'm gonna take off some of this liquid too, that you're not gonna be able to use it for, like if you're doing layering on something, this would be your first wash, your first basic wash with something. Okay, so now we're gonna add a little bit more pigment to this, and it's gonna get a little bit more thick, and look, this does move pretty well, but it is a bit more intense. So this one, we're going to paint that in. And it's going to be for your darker washes. I think I'm going to do a little bit more pigment here, a little bit more paint. It's going to be for a background wash. Again, if you're doing florals and you're wanting to add nice color in the background, or maybe you're doing a landscape and you want to add a really nice sky. This would be a good consistency for that as well. Either this one or your weak tea. Coffee is going to be what you're going for. If you want a dark one, lighter weak tea. Okay, so now we're going to go with our milk consistency. With milk consistency, the paint doesn't flow as easily on the palette, but you can still see some movement. And I would say this is something that you could use like for details on a flower. But not as dark as like your shadows. So I'm just adding more pigment. So this, it flows, but not as easily. So a little bit more. Because the next one is cream, which is not supposed to flow at all. All right, so we're gonna add that to our space over here. And as you're seeing all this, you're gonna see the color is starting to darken up little by little. Also knowing and remembering that watercolor does dry about 1 shade lighter. So now we have a nice light, medium, and a darker color. Let's mix this in water. And now we're going to take even more paint. So what we're looking for here is going to be our cream consistency. You're not gonna see movement, okay? It should not flow in your palette. I'm gonna do a little bit more water and a little bit more pigment so that we can really demonstrate that. Because if you don't have enough liquid, it's not gonna flow much anyway. So that's staying put pretty good. So it's like probably as much as we can tolerate water in there before it becomes butter, because it's just very little water, but with butter, you're not gonna have water, hardly at all, if any. All right, so we're gonna add that on. This is quite saturated. If you're not sure if you're right at it, you can go ahead and continue to add on a little bit more of your paint. The big thing is you're gonna see your paint start to darken up a lot here. Okay, so we don't have any flowing on the paper, and this is gonna be really good for your darkest darks, your shadow moments, that kind of thing. All right, and the last one is going to be, I'm just going to dab my brush here, and I'm just going to pick up pigment almost straight from the palette. If you cannot, scrub, you can add a little water. This is just gonna be your thickest one, and you're gonna get some dry brushing here. This is where it's pretty much unusable, in my opinion. I'm having a really hard time just getting this paint on the palette, from the palette onto the paper, because I'm using very little water. And so I personally don't use it this thick. I know some people will use it just for some extreme highlights. Say you could use it for white, maybe acrylic. If you have watercolor white, which is not very common on a palette, then you could use that for a little bright highlight, something really intense. And see how hard it is to even paint this on. It is so thick and intense here. Okay. So, let me know in comments if you like using butter for something besides putting it on your bread. Obviously not talking about food here, although it seems like it with all these terms, okay? So just darkening up that part here. And maybe you do like to use this consistency. I would love to hear about it and what are the times you would use it for. If you guys are liking this video, please like it, hit the like button, and feel free to subscribe to my channel. Guys, I'm teaching watercolor on Patreon, and I just found out that I can offer 7-day free trials for my bonus content. So if you want to check it out, this is something that you can utilize, and we have so much fun exclusive tutorials, live stream access, art prints, and so much more. And the link to Patreon is linked up in the description of this video. All right, so I've cleaned my water here. Just gonna clean my brush a little bit. And we're gonna do something called a value scale. So a value scale is going to demonstrate how by adding water to a paint, you can lighten it up significantly to get variations in the lightness and darkness. Value just means the lightness and the darkness of a pigment or a paint. I keep saying pigment and paint. Often we interchange those terms. Paint is referring to the product once you put together pigment and binder and the things that go into making a paint. So trying to keep those terms straight, sometimes I forget. All right, so a value scale is gonna give us a really dark color first, and we're gonna go lighter and lighter until we get to the lightest value. We're gonna do 10 of these. I'm gonna start with a red color today. So I'm gonna grab some on my brush, and I'm gonna go as dark as I possibly can. Now I do have a bit of water on there. I want it to be as thick as possible where I can still paint, not butter, but definitely more of a creamy consistency. And so all I'm gonna do is make a mark on my paper with this color, just like that, okay? So that is my darkest value. I'm gonna dip my brush in here, and I'm going to squeegee off the side, and then I'm gonna do my next value. And you can see it's already starting to lighten up a lot. dipping, squeegee. We'll see if we can get to 10 without running out, without getting too light where we can't see anything anymore. This is such a simple activity or exercise. Look at how pretty my water is looking. And this is going to show you, because with watercolor, we're not adding white to make things light like in other mediums, acrylic and oils. So we have to lighten by adding our water. And this is something we talk about brush control, we talk about water control. This is something that's going to help you learn that water control. We're at 8 right now by doing activities like this. So people ask me all the time, how much water to paint? And the answer really is, it depends on what you're trying to paint. Now we can keep going. I'm going to go use my clean water here, and we might find a different results. So if you're trying to do a light wash, a background, you're going to want to go, just like we've shown with the consistency, you're going to want to go lots of water, very little pigment, do a weak tea, or even a coffee, that would work too. But if you're wanting to do shadows and darks, you're going to want to go this cream right here. And this is cream because we have enough liquid that we can move this on our paper. Let's do this in another color. I'm going to change up my water. I'll be right back. All right, let's do this in a purple. And I'm going to grab some of that purple. See, I have a lot of water that I put on there, and maybe I don't want that much. I'm just going to take a little bit off. And I just want it as thick as possible without not being able to move the paint on the paper. So we're going to do that really dark purple there. Let's just slowly dip in, squeegee off some of that paint. And it's such a beautiful shade here too. I love that. So if you want to control your water, use your paper towel to dab your brush so you don't have so much water on your brush, and you're not flooding the area you're trying to paint. If you put too much water, then your paint is going to spread and you're going to get some texture blooms. What happens is you put your paint down just like that, and then it's starting to a little bit kind of dry, and then you just go and paint over that again. And adding more pigment and more water is going to push the original paint and water aside, and it's going to create what we call these cauliflower blooms. And it's a texture that some artists really enjoy and will do purposefully, but others, especially when you're learning, it can be very frustrating if you don't want those textures on purpose and they're just showing up. Okay, so that is our demonstration today of water control, and what kind of consistency you want and how to create a value scale. I hope you guys enjoy this. We're going to be painting together tomorrow. Make sure to check out my Patreon account for that free 7-day trial. The description is linked. I'm just going to do a little bit of details as I'm chatting here. It's linked in the description. The description is linked in the description, right? That makes sense. Makes sense. I'm so glad you guys are here. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about paper and different ways to do texture in your paintings, and a few different ways like how to do basic washes. There's 4 different types, as well as some techniques that you can use with your brush to create not only texture, but really cool marks that make your paintings more interesting. All right, guys, I will see you soon and talk to you later. Well, thank you for being here for day 2 of the Watercolor Beginners Series. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about paper, the types of paper that are available to paint on, as well as layering in watercolor and different ways to do that. We'll talk about basic washes. And finally, we're going to do a little bit of demonstration on different textures that you can use in your watercolor to create depth and interest in your paintings. I will see you tomorrow.